As with all the Twilight books, Breaking Dawn is by no means perfect. It has its share of Bella sitting around, slow discussions without any actual action, and so on. That said, despite mixed opinions within the fandom, Breaking Dawn is my personal favorite of the series. I have to appreciate a story that not only embraces its own weirdness, but that does so with a quiet mixture of bliss, humor, and gore. Breaking Dawn is controversial for its imprinting plotline, but I can't fault it for its creativity. How many other books actually cover vampire baby births? How many actually start with a honeymoon as a catalyst for disaster? Most vampire books offer a few stakes, maybe a sword or two, and call it a day. But it's my feeling that, love it or hate it, Breaking Dawn, with all its bizarre twists and surprisingly bloody passages, is something special. And here's why. Before we continue, I'm Riley and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I rant about my favorite fantasy books, discuss lore around characters and worlds, offer my bookish opinions, and share the occasional writing advice. If any of this sounds like your cup of blood, hit that subscribe button. Posts are on Fridays. There are 5 reasons Breaking Dawn, in all its strangeness, is the best Twilight book. Reason number 1 is Stephanie's voice. Stephenie Meyer was a green author when she wrote the first Twilight book. Propelled suddenly to fame, placed in the same spotlight as the likes of Cassandra Clare or even J.K. Rowling, she didn't have it easy. Her first book reads like a first book. Conceived as a passion project and accepted by a small publishing house, it was never written to be compared with Harry Potter. However, owing to its resonance with fans, it was pushed into that position. The first book has greater pacing issues, awkward word choices, and overly verbose prose. Stephanie's first book was being compared with the 7th book of several other famous authors, and I can't blame her for being overwhelmed. All the flaws of the series aside, Stephanie's writing shows growth in Breaking Dawn. If given more time, Breaking Dawn might have been better as a first book, at least as far as writing goes. It has its flaws too, but character voices feel more defined, and Stephanie's actual style is clearer. She leans into her quirky sense of humor, and Bella seems, if not riveting, less boring than in previous iterations. Jacob's voice is also able to shine, with his unique chapter headings and conversations with fellow pack members Seth and Leah being highlights of the book. Other people might disagree, but I personally enjoy Meyer's humor in this one. Whether it's Jacob's cringy jokes towards Rosalie, or Bella gritting her teeth over the before car and after car situation, Meyer happily embraces the more dramatic comedy. Bella's also given more time to mull over her impending immortality, and in beginning life as a Colin, she mourns the loss of such things as Pop-Tarts and shoelaces. It's a simple phrase, but there's something clear and relatable about it. When it comes to big changes, sometimes it's the little things you miss first. Breaking Dawn isn't a deep book, but it digs into such subject matter more than the previous iterations. Reason number 2 is that it's weird. Breaking Dawn is kind of a weird book, but I've always loved weird, and I've always appreciated stories which weren't afraid to beat to the sound of their own drums. From vampires attending prom to evil Italian overlords running the vampire world, the Twilight series has always been off the wall. Edward compares his beloved to heroin, and sometimes he fantasizes about guzzling her dry. Bella is turned on by dating a dead guy who might snap her neck, and her second love interest is an angsty werewolf with his own set of issues. If you're looking for a deep read with common sense and tight twists, the Twilight books aren't that. On the other hand, if you're looking for a fun read with plenty of strangeness, Twilight is worthwhile, and Breaking Dawn only leans further into the outright crazy. There's something to be said for a story that knows it's crazy, and embraces it. Breaking Dawn is strange and proud of it. Twilight takes itself too seriously, but Breaking Dawn feels more like it knows itself. By the 4th entry of the series, Meyer seemed to know what she had. The weirdest plotline, of course, is the pregnancy. After enjoying a honeymoon with her vampire husband, which in itself is unusual even in the world of YA, Bella discovers she is pregnant. As it turns out, vampires still have their own version of sperm, and hybrid children have a chromosome count which is unique from both humans and vampires. The science in this one is weird, but I couldn't call it boring. The birth nearly kills Bella, and during those passages when Bella is stretched on the couch, the reader follows the mind of Jacob, along with his smarmy comments and sour opinions on vampires. Then, of course, there's the imprinting plotline. While this one hasn't aged well, Meyer gets points for being off-the-wall weird. At this point, it's best to run with it. Bella chooses Edward, and leftover Jacob lives happily ever after, with her daughter. It's messed up, but that's part of Breaking Dawn's charm. There are smaller instances of weird too, like Edward suggesting Bella have sex with Jacob on the weekends so she can produce children who won't kill her. No, really, that is a conversation in the book, and Jacob, bless his heart, is tempted. Still, kudos to Edward for being pro-polyamorous, I guess. Reason number 3, it's darker. All of the Twilight books have their dark moments. James tortures Bella, snapping her bones and making her bleed while he films her. Jane torments her victims for kicks. The Volturi eat people en masse after having them lured in like pigs with apples in their mouths. And vampires kill people, snap necks, and drink blood. Even with its lush forests and mist-shrouded canopies, there's an ugliness within the beauty. That said, I'd still consider the first 3 books more lighthearted. Well, not New Moon, which is moody as hell, but I couldn't call that book any more morbid than the others. Breaking Dawn's chipper tone and sense of humor keeps the mood lighter as well, but the actual subject matter is darker. The first pages are a happy slice of life, featuring a wedding and blissful honeymoon scenes. But from the get-go, a sense of unease is created through Bella's strange and vivid dreams. She dreams repeatedly of the Volturi, and then of a child she fights to protect from them. It's not bad foreshadowing for the second half of the book, even if the revelation she could have a kid is a bit on the nose. As for the pregnancy, that's where the book takes a darker turn. With the exception of James, Bella has been left mostly unscathed by the vampire world. But that changes when she becomes pregnant with a vampire's baby. Now she's exposed to the full brutality of vampires, and it's not pretty. To begin, the nutritional needs of the fetus are incompatible with those of Bella. Slowly, Bella starves to death. Her stomach balloons out, becoming peppered with bruises, while the rest of her grows brittle and waxy. If that wasn't bad enough, the boisterous baby breaks her bones, resulting in cracked ribs and constant bed rest. Bella is hooked to an IV, which is essentially useless in keeping her alive, and she seems doomed to die through sheer stubbornness. It's only when Bella starts drinking blood, from a straw in a cup no less, that she regains health. Of course, just as Bella finds a way to heal, the werewolves plan an attack. Sam seems like a decent person, but there is the fact he plans to kill a child to protect humanity. Jacob also plans to murder the baby, until he finds out they're soulmates. Between descriptions of cracking bones, gushing blood, and an especially violent birth, Breaking Dawn doesn't shy away from the supernatural world's gritty side. It embraces the gore and reminds the reader, after proms and weddings, that vampires are still monsters and that there are consequences to trying to keep up with them. Reason number 4 is the world building. Breaking Dawn vastly expands on the world of Twilight. The first 3 books mostly focus on the Collins, adding in the werewolves and the Volturi, but otherwise keeping the focus pretty small. Breaking Dawn, though, grows the cast, introducing not only more diverse characters, but new superpowers too. In addition to mind readers like Edward or seers like Alice, we learn there are other crazy abilities. Benjamin is like a wizard, capable of shifting earth, moving water, and sprouting fire from his fingers. Zephrina can make others see what she wants them to see, tricking them into believing they're in a jungle if she wishes. Kate can zap her opponents, and others still can affect outcomes through intention. The reader learns more about other covens, their lifestyles, and of what vampires can be capable of. The introduction of so many characters and their powers also leaves the world open for any future stories Meyer might want to tell. Personally, I'd love a spin-off book dedicated to Benjamin, who's basically a vampire mage. Then you have the werewolves. During Bella's pregnancy, readers are treated to Jacob's point of view, and I enjoy his voice. It's distinct from Bella's, and Jacob's bitter humor and cynicism make for a nice change of pace after all of Bella's desperate optimism. During Jacob's section, during which he leads Leah and Seth as a pack leader, we're given a glimpse of pack life. We see how their telepathy functions after only hearing about it, as well as how alpha wolves work. After following the perspective of the vampires, it's a needed change of scenery to see the wolf's point of view. Plus, snarky Leah is given some much-needed character development. She has opinions of her own, and they're not completely out there when you understand where she's coming from. Instead of seeing her as bitter, you're reminded that, like Jacob, she's just heartbroken. Finally, there's the matter of hybrid children, which, with their unusual chromosomes and rapid growth rates, add to vampire lore. The reader, along with the Cullens, learns that vampires are less static than previously thought. With the help of humans, they can have children, kids with their own genetics, rules, and abilities. During the misunderstanding with Irina, readers also learn more about vampire history, including the culling of the immortal children, and how such beings differ from hybrids. Male hybrids are venomous, while females aren't. They can survive on either human food or blood, though they generally prefer the latter, and they, like vampires or humans, can inherit psychic talents. Typically, the human mothers don't survive unless they're changed, and hybrids, though weaker than vampires, are still stronger and faster than humans, and incapable of aging. It's not a bad concept as far as world building goes, and as with the introduction of new vampires, or even the idea that there are real werewolves out there of a more classic bent, they leave the world open for new stories. Reason number 5 is that Bella has agency. Once Bella is bitten and made into a vampire, she gains the agency so many fans crave. While it's unfortunate it took 3.5 books for Bella to reach this point, it nevertheless makes the last third of the book more interesting. After hearing Edward explain what it's like to be a vampire, we finally see what it's like firsthand. Bella can see an 8th color, zoom in on textures, pick out the type and freshness of scents, and slow down the world around her as she runs. Furthermore, she finds her mind has more space, allowing her to concentrate on several things at once. Her memory is sharp, and everything, from the blood of animals to the air, has a distinct flavor. Nights, too, are shrouded in their own brilliant colors. One could argue that Bella should have been made a vampire at the end of book 1, because she's simply more engaging as one. With her own psychic ability, we're also treated to a plotline during which she trains herself. Expanding her shield so that it can protect others, she is aided by Sabrina and Kate. In improving the ability, she even learns how to push it from herself, so that Edward, for the first time, can read her mind. Moreover, Bella is allowed to participate as an equal in fights. Needing no sleep, she can't be left out of the action. She can protect herself, including against werewolves who have annoyed her, and she can make choices along with the rest of the family. When it comes time to face the Valkyrie down, Bella, instead of playing the role of damsel in distress, is the hero of the day. Thwarting the Valkyrie's gifts with her own, she, along with Alice, prevents a battle which would have been catastrophic for both sides. If Bella, wielding her shield, her self-control, and her abilities, had been made a vampire sooner, the earlier books may have benefited, and Bella would have been slightly less frustrating to follow, if only because she would have had not only the power to protect herself, but to assert her choices. Of course, it could be argued that she begins demonstrating agency as a human too, as this is the book where Bella also insists on having sex and carrying the pregnancy to term. These are all Bella's choices, and everything which goes wrong occurs as a result of her choices. Instead of being a reactive protagonist, Bella instigates the plot. Rather than reacting to Edward's choices, she drives the story on her own, and that in itself improves the saga. A narrative where Bella makes choices and affects the story is only amplified by her being a vampire, when she gains the power to protect the family she fought to have and the existence she chose. In conclusion, despite its wild plot and weird writing, I have to give Breaking Dawn credit for knowing where it stands. The plot, while weird, is original enough, and the author manages to find her voice. Fueled by quirky humor, gritty passages, darker content, and outrageous plot twists, the book is one of the more memorable in the series. As a reader, if only because it's strange and zany and messed up, I have to give it 4 stars for entertainment value. Admittedly, there's the nostalgia factor too, but I can't help it. Flaws and all, I love this book. Plus, I admire the author's enthusiasm. Sometimes you can tell a writer was having fun throughout a book, and Breaking Dawn is one such story. With every paragraph, I can sense Meyer enjoying herself, and that just makes me happy. Bella also becomes more interesting, not only making dramatic choices as a human, but finding her power as a vampire, changing from damsel in distress to hero of the day through her own efforts. Finally, there's the world building, which, for fans of Breaking Dawn, or the series overall, leaves the Twilight universe open to new stories. Whether it be a spin-off following Benjamin or Sabrina, a sequel dedicated to the hybrid Renesmee, a tale introducing us to a real werewolf hero, or simply a conclusion where the Valkyrie get their comeuppance, Breaking Dawn leaves the Twilight franchise with potential for more. Would you read another book from the Twilight world? Do you wish Bella had been made a vampire sooner? What would you rate Breaking Dawn? Sound off in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy reading.